Good afternoon, David Carden.
Good afternoon, user Khorakiwala.
Good morning. This is Stefan Kraan, but my video is not the right one yet. It's projecting something at the back of my computer and not me. So
David, can you see me?
Yes, very clearly. Can you see me?
Yes, very clearly. Yes, thank you. Where are you, David? Which country?
I am in Italy.
Oh, I hope it's all safe over there.
It's better now than it was 2 months ago, yes.
Yeah.
But like everybody, we are waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. Which part of Italy are you in?
I am based in the north between Milan and Turin.
Okay. Yeah. How about you, Stephen? Where are you?
I'm in Ireland on the west coast, Galway, and it's just past 10 o'clock here. And here it's relatively safe. We were not as badly hit as Italy, but we went through a lockdown as well. And actually, we're still in it in a way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in a hill station out of Bombay. So at my farm, which is about 2 hours away from Bombay. So
you have a farm?
Sorry?
You have a farm?
Yes, my farmhouse, because Bombay is in a partial lockout, so we are all working from anywhere.
Yeah, but what do you farm?
Well, it's we have a lot of mangoes here. We have rice. We have about 20 acres on the lake. So I come here almost every weekend, but now because of the lockout, we are staying here for a few days.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm just checking if the sound is better now, because sometimes with the microphone on Zoom it works very well.
Put on my headset as well.
David,
put on my headset as well.
Is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Steph,
better.
you were very clear for me. Yes, better.
Okay, great. Then I leave the headphone off. Because I know with Skype, for some reason, it doesn't work. Microsoft Teams, it will work, but not as good. What is it, this Adobe program? It doesn't work at all.
Yeah, how does it work now? Can you hear me more clearly?
Yes, absolutely. That is great.
Yeah, I just put on my headset, so. Hi, Sandeepa, how are you?
Hi, Suzar, how are you?
Oh, you are in Pune.
Yeah, I'm now in office. I started. Vipin, can you talk?
Your voice is breaking, I think.
Okay.
I think there is interference. Maybe you have a radio.
No, I think she's on the computer and the phone.
Both.
Oh, yeah, it's always great fun, these WebEx seminars. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, Sandeep, I'm at my farm in Pauna.
Ah. And little children.
Sorry?
No, I hear little children running around as well.
Yeah, my 4 grandchildren are with me. My 2 daughters, his son and his wife, and my wife. There are 12 of us here.
Oh, Mr. Good afternoon, Mr. Khorakiwala.
Good afternoon, Tapan. Good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. You're in Calcutta
Yeah,
or?
I'm in Calcutta at home.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
we are
Mr.
all
Bipin,
Yeah, actually, Bipin said that his video, he cannot see himself, so he's trying with his.
Tapar, your voice is breaking.
I'm not. I'm just talking now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because Tapan is very emotional. His voice is breaking.
Stephen,
So, can we use this time to introduce? Sorry.
The good thing is I already have my name tag.
Ah.
That was from January, pre-COVID.
Ah, okay. Yeah, can we briefly introduce ourselves so that we know each other?
Yeah, that's fine. I will start. I'm Stefan Kraan. I'm 35 years in seaweed. Started in the Netherlands. That's where I'm originally from. Pursued a PhD in Ireland, then set up a research center in applied phycology that I run for 10 years with my own postdocs and PhDs. 2009, I broke out and resigned and basically started my own business in animal feed. That company is flourishing. I left that 2 years ago as one of the bigger shareholders and set up a new company called the Seaweed Company. That's what I'm doing today. And that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Okay. My name is Juzer Khorakiwala. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you again.
Yeah, so I run an agrochemical company, which is quite a diversified company. We are into crop protection chemicals. We do biological products, which are mainly based on seaweed. We are the largest buyer of seaweed in India for many, many years. We also manufacture and market seeds, mainly millets. Then we also manufacture and market aquaculture products, mainly for shrimps. We also do a lot of contract custom manufacturing for multinationals in India. And we have an overseas subsidiary in the Philippines. We do crop protection chemicals and also biologicals, that is seaweed based. And we have a joint venture in Vietnam for mainly aquaculture. So that's the profile of our organization, Biostat India Limited. And we have been the pioneers of seaweed in India for the last almost 40 years. So that's our profile of our organization.
Well, thank you, Stefan.
Yeah.
Oh, my name is David Cardon, based in Italy, working for Valagro. And we have a subsidiary within India, several around the world. And I'm from Ireland originally, so that's interesting for you, Stefan. I studied agriculture at University College Dublin, Ireland. And I moved around a little bit in the research world and ended up in Italy working for Valagro. And I've been with Valagro for 17 years and heading up the regulatory affairs since 2007.
guys, maybe just as an etiquette, if you're not speaking, just put it on mute, because that will reduce a lot of background noise. That makes a big difference, I think.
Yes.
So maybe you move on to Dr. Arup Ghosh.
Yeah, Arup. Arup, can you hear me? Arup, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Tapan, I think his sound is not working.
My sound?
No, from Dr. Arup Ghosh.
Yes, I'm not hearing him. I cannot hear him also.
If he can hear us, maybe unplug the headset.
Yeah.
You know, I will message him on chat.
Yes, yes. Arup,
I just sent him a message. See if he picks it up.
Maybe in the meantime, we can move on to the next person.
Good plan, David. Well, I think Arup is the only one left.
Sandeepa,
Oh yeah, she was here as well, but she's gone.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay. So good afternoon all. My name is Sandeepa Kanitkar. I own a company called CanBioSys Private Limited, and we are basically into microbes for agriculture. And we have a team of around 250 people working in 9 states of India and exporting to 5 countries. And we basically have microbes for soil health, nutrition, and pest management. So all of our products are registered in India for as fertilizers or as biopesticides. Recently, we have come out into this biostimulant sector, which right now is not registered sector in India, and we are trying to do work in this sector. We have recently formed an organization called BASAI. So I am happy to meet you all and then express my views about biostimulants. Thank you.
Thank you.
So anybody else is remaining? I think so. Arup is talking. We are not listening.
No, Arup has sound problems.
Yeah, so I believe he should disconnect and join again so that whatever his settings are,
yeah.
will get
Yeah. And also the Bipin is not available as of now.
Yeah, Tapan, we can see you now. Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon all. Yeah.
It's good to see you
Only
again.
Bipin has some problem with his video, so that is why he's struggling, I believe.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. I think I needed to change some settings.
Yeah.
And you can see me?
Yeah, but only half of you. Just
Yeah.
change.
Only one eye, Arup.
One eye.
Yeah, now it's okay.
That's better.
Okay, now you can see me.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Arup Ghosh. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I am a principal scientist over here in Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute. This is a government institute under Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. we have several divisions related to seaweeds. We do cultivation technology of seaweeds, and I had particularly the downstream portion of this activity. So I have been working on biostimulants for more than last 15 years. Basically, the basic research about understanding the mechanism of action of how these biostimulants work, and we also did a lot of trials on these biostimulants so as to know what is the mechanism and what are the effects and what are the proper doses. I think that is all.
Okay.
So today, from an organization point of view, the presentations, who is going to project all of our presentations? Is the organizer, or should each individual panelist in some way show their presentation?
Well, as far as I understood, David, you don't share the screen. It's organized centrally, but I might be wrong. Tapan?
So I think so. Mr. Tapan is doing it for us by sharing his screen now.
Mr. Tapan, are you doing it?
I think Tapan is getting a coffee.
His microphone is muted, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
So I think I'll just call up Vipin and see what his problems are so that we can get the moderator on board.
The share button is not working in this.
Oh, he
The
has,
share screen, I don't know. No,
Yeah, there's a top button, share screen, share button is there, but I believe this is not working.
no, then there is a moderator, and you just have to, well, talk about the slide and say next slide, I think. As a matter of fact, I use WebEx not very often. So, but we have to kill the time anyway for the next 10 minutes before we start officially. We're all working in seaweeds and in biostimulants in agriculture, is that right?
Yes.
yes.
Because I think I have seen you.
Yes.
Arup. I've seen your presentation, Arup, in January.
Yeah, right. I did it
Because
in Chennai.
yeah, exactly. You were talking about those Bella proteins and
Yes.
how that affected the whole chain, if I remember correctly.
Right, sir.
But you're very much into gene expression and how that is affected and what the results are. Is that right? Yeah.
Right, and now we also have something good for animals as well. We have some formulations which we have developed. Of course, I'll not be presenting here, but just for information that they are, I mean, like reducing methane emissions in the cattle. Then there's a good effect on poultry as well as milch animals.
Then I would like to talk with you after the conference or by email.
Yeah, sure.
That is one of the things we are very much interested in ourselves in the animal feed domain.
Okay.
And Sandeepa, you say you were growing microbes.
Yes.
should I think like bifidum and lactobacteria and things like that, or bacillus, or maybe you can tell a little bit more? You're on mute, Sandeepa.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I see the lips moving, but I don't hear anything. So,
Yeah. So basically, we are growing microbes which are useful for agriculture. So we are not into probiotics and all, like lactobacillus and bacillus coagulans and all. So basically, we are right now trying to produce nitrogen fixing, P solubilizing, K mobilizing microbes, and also plant growth promoting microbes as a part of the nutrition based. And as part of the pesticides, we are growing all endopathogens, nematophagous fungi, and other mycoparasitic fungi. So all in all, we are producing the formulations in these varieties.
okay. See, I've always been a believer of where you have a probiotic, which can be a lactobacillus, combined with a prebiotic, which could be a fiber from seaweed, and make a joint product and use that in animal health or human health.
Correct.
Because you straight away feed the bacteria as well.
Yeah.
Is anything like that on the market yet?
Right now, I'm not aware about animal nutrition and all. We are more into agriculture. So, but lactobacillus is mainly used in human kind of probiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is there. And prebiotics also are on the marketplace. So basically, there are fructooligosaccharides and all. These kinds of things are mainly used, or xylose-based, you can say, cultures.
Well, I look forward to seeing your presentation myself, actually.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to.
Yeah, Stephen, we use probiotics in aquaculture for prawn. Sorry?
No, you had a joint venture in Vietnam, was it?
Yes, we have a joint venture in Vietnam where we have a hatchery producing seeds for prawns. And then we market a lot of input products for prawn farming in India as well as in Vietnam. So in that connection, we have probiotics, some probiotics that we use for aquaculture.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with Vietnam, as we have a subsidiary in Vietnam ourselves. Or in my
Okay.
and shrimp cultivation, yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, Vietnam is very big for prawn farming and shrimp culture.
No.
I think so.
And David, you said you did your degree in Ireland.
No. I didn't do any. No, I did my management degree in Philippines, not in Ireland.
No. But I was referring to David.
Okay.
Yes, I'm originally from Ireland and from Dublin area, and studied agricultural science at Dublin. So I left Ireland, I think, before you arrived, Stefan.
I arrived in 1995.
Yeah, I finished in 91.
Oh, okay, there you go. Well, yeah, with a second name Owen, that makes sense that you're from Ireland.
Yes.
No, but you were in UCD or in Cork or?
UCD, University College Dublin, yeah. Did agricultural science, the horticultural speciality as it was then. And yeah, became very interested in science and moved into the scientific area, moving around a little bit. And moved into industry when I moved to Italy, which was 17 years ago now.
Wow, so
I'm old.
yeah, well, I think at this stage we're all getting up in age. But in 70 years in Italy, so but are you still Irish or did you switch?
I'm still Irish and only Irish.
Yeah, I see that, and I have the same thing, being 26 years in Ireland, but I'm still Dutch. But yeah, that is a downside because I'm not allowed to vote. And do you still follow the political system?
Oh yes, very, very closely. Yeah, especially at this moment.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, because we have a new government.
Mhm.
And funny as well, because it finally leaves civil war politics behind with the coalition of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil.
Yes, well, I think you've been in Ireland long enough now that you appreciate what seemed very strange and unthinkable. And as you get older in life, I think all the things that you once thought were impossible, they can happen one day, and then it seems normal. So
Yeah.
I'm sure by the time of the next election, I think this will be history then. This sort of new.
Politics is making compromises, so makes sense.
Just a question, can the attendees hear us having this conversation, or are they excluded until the next 5 minutes? Just that they don't hear us talking about politics.
I don't know, actually.
Actually, Tapan will be able to answer this.
Yeah. Oh, that would be funny now, David.
Yes, try and maintain a professional front at least. Perhaps Tapan is busy organizing everybody at the moment.
I think so. Tapan, you can hear us?
No, I am only worried that Vipin is unable to connect because his video and audio, nothing is working. So
hello everybody, this is Vipin Sani. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Vipin, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Can you hear
Mr. Bipin, we can hear you.
You can see me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello Stephen. Hello everybody. Sorry for the mess up. I was just trying to get on the video. Hi David. How are you?
Okay.
Great. Dr. Arun. Arup. Hi. Long time.
Hi. Great.
Hello ma'am.
Great.
How are you? Zuzar Saab, Tapan Saab. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining in.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm very happy that Vipin has, after a lot of struggle, has been into this program, and I was constantly following you up from my side.
Yes,
So
you have. I had somebody from the IT team from Biostat, and he helped me out. Very kind of him. So thank you. So we start in another minute or so.
Mr. Tapan, one thing, are you going to project the presentation, because we can't do it from here?
no, you can share. You can go to share screen and make the PPT.
Where is it?
No, but
Share content.
Here to
The share screen.
You have to give access. Tapan, you have to give access. We are not able to share.
No, it has not been started. No, share because.
Okay, fair enough. If there's any issue, then I'll share it. Otherwise, everybody can share their own presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, right now it is not working.
No. Yeah,
I believe it will start at 3. So probably that.
1 minute. 1 minute. Let me tell you that the presentations are with the speakers. The presentation copy is with Vipin, and the presentation copy is with my IT support. So once the presentation will start, if anybody fails, the other person will help it out.
Okay, fine.
The moment the shared content button is faded out, so at least I will not have access.
Same here, David.
David, this is the same thing for everybody. Probably officially the meeting has not started from Cisco, so probably that is why. We will just find that out. We'll just sort that thing out, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So Stephen, I believe we've met before you were there during the Chennai event of ICC.
Yes, in the wonderful days that didn't exist.
Yes, we met over there. So Tapan, when would you like to join, start the thing? Share content is still not there.
Okay, okay. We'll start now. Within 2 to 3 minutes, we will start. And all the people has already started. A large number of people has already started. We have a registration now about.
A suggestion might be who is not speaking puts their microphone on mute.
Yeah. Tapan, we need to test our screen sharing, which is still not happening. So if we can just try it before we officially start our meeting conference, it will be better.
It's probably the host that has to switch that on or off.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking ICC to do it. Mr. Tapan is on. Should be getting it done shortly.
Yeah.
Just wait a minute. I will just coordinate with my IT.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Please do.
Yeah.
So, David and Stephen, how are things over there in your part of the world regarding COVID?
You want to start off, David?
I'm based in Italy. The situation now is much better and is currently quite stable compared to several months ago when Italy was, after China, was the worst affected country and seemed to start within Europe here. So it was a very serious situation and it has stabilized now. So let us hope we are out of lockdown. So life is back to what might be called a new normal.
Yeah, everybody's into the new normal. Stephen, what about you?
Well, in Ireland, we are not yet there with the new normal, but this Monday, for example, my soccer team is allowed to train again, but we still do this under COVID rules with sanitation, with the drop-off with parents. So we're almost back to normal, but not yet. Although in Ireland, of course, we went very quickly into a lockdown, a real lockdown, where you were not allowed to go further from your house like 2 kilometers, and later on 5 and then 20. And that has kept it well under control, I must say. Of course, it has disastrous effects on the economy, but yeah, that is then the downside of it. But we're almost back to normal.
Okay, now we can start this, and when this opportunity will come, these IT people will be on. Okay.
So, I mean, we can, I mean, you want to start it now? Because nobody can share anything. Why don't we just try sharing something?
Once. Okay.
Please, before we officially start it. Thanks to this lockdown, we are all now going to be IT experts soon.
I can still not share anything.
Yeah, even I cannot. But now the presenter, okay, now I can.
Okay.
Now I can, just a minute, let me see. Go photos, mail, settings. Oh. So, okay, can everybody see now?
Yes.
I've shared the screen. Is it coming?
Yeah, but it's very small.
Now? Okay.
Vipin, are you sharing mine?
Hello, Vipin. Can we?
Vipin, are you sharing my presentation?
Okay. So now, Stephen, can you share your screen? Is it possible for you now? If you need to unmute yourself.
And we can't
Sorry.
share the
No, I still don't have share.
Okay. Okay. Then when I shared the previous PDF, everybody was able to see, right?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So whenever your whomsoever speaker is coming, then I'll share the screen. Fine, and you can just next, and I'll keep on doing it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So,
what is the order of presentation?
Yeah, I mean, first we have got Mr. Tapan giving an introductory, then I'll be just starting the whole issue by introducing the speaker one by one during their speaks. First comes Sandeepa Kanetkar, then Arup Ghosh, then Zuzar Khorakiwala, and then on the fourth we have David Carden, and fifth is Stephen Pran. So we'll be following it up in that order. So Tapan, should we start it now?
yes. Yes. Now we'll start.
Okay, so please.
Okay. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, on Indian Chamber of Commerce and we are welcoming you all into today's program. Just to introduce ICC, ICC is one important chamber in the country and has access to the nation. ICC works very closely with the state governments across the country, and also we work with various institutions in India. We take up almost all the sectors in India as concerned, and we facilitate these industries in government, and also took up the issue which can be beneficial to the people of India.
Tapan, your voice is not coming across. Tapan, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Please continue.
Okay. So therefore, we have identified the sector as biostimulant, which is one of the very, very upcoming industrial sectors, and different types of development and the future is concerned. As far as is concerned, 180 billion will this target will reach around 2023 and at a CAGR of 16.49%, which indicates that this is one of the very, very high growth sector. And this sector also, the analysis of the demand, supply, and the sales and recent development of this sector has made, and there are issues. In today's conference, we deliberate all these issues, and definitely will come out and will be in. We welcome Mr. Vipin Chani, Mrs. Sankar Chai and MD Can Biosis, Dr. O, Principal Secretary, Mr. Juzar Khorakiwala, Chairman of Mr. David Card, International Export of Basai, and Dr. Stephen Kran, President of ISA and CEO of the Seaweed Company. And we have our respected the sponsors as well as the delegates. We welcome you all into this seminar, and we have a session for a question and answer. We'll request also to interact. And finally, I want to hand over the mic to Mr. Bipin Saini for deliberating the significance of the program. Thank you. Yes, Bipin, please.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the role of biostimulants to boost the new normal GDP growth of India. Co-organized along with the Indian Chamber of Commerce, BSI, Biological Agri Solutions Association of India. Just a brief, our association is a fairly young association, basically all having manufacturers and companies dealing with biologicals as biostimulants, seaweeds, or crop protection and things like that. We recently on 13th of June had completed 1 year of our existence, and we are pleased to have this timely e-conference today with all of you. We in India at the moment are still under the process of drafting legislations for biostimulants, which is the main topic, and how are we going to play an important role in the new, formation of the business going on post the COVID-19 situation, which is still prevailing in many parts of the world. Now, it is also exciting to see that, in 2020, which is being celebrated as the International Year of Plant Health, and biostimulants primarily do play a huge, role in providing that kind of support to plants. And it is even more so that the United Nations is celebrating various decades. One of the most important ones I'd like to mention is about the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Now, this is being celebrated since 2021. This will be celebrated from 2021 to 2030, which also incidentally, coincides with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, these international decades celebrated by the United Nations, a couple of others will be of importance, like the Decade of Action on Nutrition, which biostimulants will play. The more the healthier the crop, the better nutrient concept probably to be there, and also to safeguard the nutrient value of the crop itself. And then 2020 happens to be the end of the decade on biodiversity. So everything is timely. We will be addressing ecosystem restoration, nutrition, biodiversity, and I believe that keeping all international obligations and going along with international institutes, as well as our country, individual countries. India now is trying to move away from chemicals in agriculture, and this provides us a huge, opportunity, I believe. Having said that, I'll now like our speakers to come across. Just a kind note to the speakers that each speaker may kindly restrict themselves to 18 minutes so that they have an average of 2 minutes extra just to wind up in case they want to. And all question and answers will be taken across afterwards. Anybody wanting to have a question, either type it down on the chat or raise their hands so that they can come across. It will be more audible to everybody, and the participation is going to look nice. On part of BSI, we also are having the Department of Horticulture from the government of Haryana also joining us. And I welcome all of them, and every dignitary, every friend, colleague who has joined us today. I am extremely, grateful to them for joining in. Our first speaker is Ms. Sandeepa Kanitkar. Ms. Sandeepa Kanitkar happens to be the vice chair of BASAI, one of the vice chairs. We have got two vice chairpersons in BASAI. She also happens to be the MD of Can Biosys. She is a postgraduate in industrial microbiology from the University of Pune, India. And she has also done an agribusiness management course from Cornell University in 2007. Madam Kanitkar is also an ex-member of the Department of Biotechnology Task Force on Biofertilizers, and also as well as the Task Force on Secondary Agriculture under the Planning Commission, Government of India. She has also won a lot of awards. One of them that I'd like to mention is the Wife of Gold Medal from the hands of His Excellency Vice President, Government of India, Shri Krishna Kant, in the year 2001. Madam Kanitkar will be speaking upon importance of agri output post-lockdown and the role of microbial biostimulants. Before Madam Kanitkar, you join in, just another advice to all the speakers, especially from the Indian side, that biostimulants are still under legislation, still under formation. So there are many confusing things going around where some biostimulants are registered in the fertilizer control order or the insecticide act. So you may please like to clarify during your presentations on the same aspect. So over to you, Madam Sandeepa. I'll just share your PPT, or can you share yourself? Sandeepa? You need to unmute yourself.
You have to do it, Vipin, from your
Okay, I'll share it. I'll just share it. Just a minute. I'll share it. Ladies and gentlemen, the benefits of IT is amazing. You can also get easily lost. So here comes the presentation. Over to you, Madam Sandeepa.
Thank you, Vipin. Good afternoon, all. Very happy to interact with you during this lockdown phase.
Sandeepa, can you be a little bit louder? The voice is coming. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit louder will be better.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is it okay?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, all. I'm really happy to be interacting with you all during this. There's a lot of disturbance within.
Madam, your voice is breaking and it's not clear, please.
I think Tapan needs to unmute himself.
Now you're unmuted, I believe.
No, Tapan needs to be muted.
Now you are?
Yes.
Okay.
You can mute Vipin so that the voices will be clear. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine now. Yeah, should I begin?
Yeah, sure. I'll start from the first, okay?
Please mute your microphone because it is having a lot of disturbance behind it.
I will, just a minute. Let me.
Yeah, so till Vipin mutes his microphone.
Just a minute, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear in front of you biostimulants. Now, all of us really are trying to understand the biostimulants in a right set, as I believe. This is not my presentation. This is Susan's presentation.
No, just a minute. Somebody else has come up. Where is yours? Yeah. Sorry.
Just on the first page, please.
Yeah, here you go.
First page. Yeah, thank you so much. post-lockdown and the role of microbial biostimulants. Basically, as I'm a industrial biologist, so we are working on microbes which are useful in agriculture for the past 30 years. We started work mainly on nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and then we isolated around 8,000 culture isolates from all across India in India at Can basis for agriculturally important microorganisms. So we found out that the microbiome, which has right now gained significance in different sectors, not only in the plants, but also in the human aspect, it is finding great potential in bringing out different actives into the environment. So we believe that microbes in agriculture is going to be very important if we are going to be if we are going to be working on increasing the efficiency of fertilizers.
Mr. Bipin, could we ask you to silence your microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes. So, yes. So microbes are going to be very important. The efficiency of fertilizers, the efficiency of pesticides, and one more important aspect about microbes is looking after the soil health. So Vipinji, can we ask you to mute your microphone, please?
Now it's okay.
Yes, now it's okay, but my presentation, yes. So that is the most important aspect about microbes. Not only the improving the efficiency of fertilizers, but also of pesticide and soil health management. So if we look about some of the challenges in agriculture, the facts and challenges, there is a problem about yield stagnation, there's a problem about soil health deterioration, then inefficient resource utilization with respect to seeds, pesticides, soils, fertilizers, energy, and water. So this is the main aspect about agriculture when the inefficiencies are huge. And there is a lot of scope in improving the inefficiencies by having different technologies to improve the yields of the farmers in a sustainable manner. Now, when I talked about sustenance is very important in this aspect of circular economy, wherein all of us has to contribute our great deal. Now, the world GDP in agriculture, if you talk about that, India ranks second, and US ranks third, and China ranks first. So, if at all we look at the contribution aspect can still go up if you increase the efficiency of all these limiting factors in agriculture. And all in all, everything is leading to the low profitability. So, this aspect is very important. One more star which I have presented over there is of COVID-19, wherein all of us are right now aware about the residues or the safety of human health and animal health. This is gaining a lot of importance in the minds of the consumers. And when we talk about agriculture, it's usually a kind of a unidirectional arrow which goes from the farmers to the consumers. But now it's going to be a bi-directional arrow which the consumers are also going to demand the safe and nutritious food. So this is going to be a very important aspect. Next. Now, in this COVID situation, I'm very happy in India that all of us were well fed, and farmers, they did a great job along with the transporters to get the food to the consumers. So we call the farmer the very important warrior who really gave us food security during this crisis time. So our diligence goes to this farmer who really could work in his field and feed us in the cities. Next. So we cannot really afford any shortages of food even if we have to increase the efficiency. In fact, that is the main aspect about India, wherein the shortage of food during Kharif, if there is shortage of food, then it will lead to a great calamity to a population of 1 billion. So this is going to be nutritional security is going to be very important. And the second aspect of health and safety, that is in fact the driving force behind the sustainable agriculture, of which my topic of biostimulants is also going to be a very important part. Next. Now, as I was mentioning about agriculture and feeding the farmers, feeding the domestic markets, here is the excerpt, or here is a news item from Hindustan Time. We show that not only the domestic market, but the farmers were also feeding, in fact, they were carrying out the exports. So we had very good success stories in the areas of pomegranate and in the grape belt and the banana belt, which could export a lot of agriculture produce not only to the near countries but also to the far countries. So this was a very important aspect, and I give hats off to the government on this for continuing the exports of many of the food items. Next. So if we talk about issues, every presentation in agriculture begins with an issue, and which I really am fed up of now. But then I really could not, do anything besides showing our audience these issues which are there in agriculture, which I would broadly mention. And I believe this presentation will be available to all the people on Basai website. So I'll be just citing 3 issues which are extremely important. The first issue is of phasing out of pesticides due to safety issues. The low efficiency of fertilizers, which are resulting in increasing the cost of farming. And third, the soil erosion and the loss of fertility. So these 3 issues are extremely important and are limitations in growing food. So tackling these issues has become a necessity, and we, all of us, are in need of a workable solution for this. So when I talk about issues, every issue should have a solution. So my company, we believe that many of the solutions in agriculture, they are available with these small entities which we cannot see, which we are called as microbes. And they form a 50% part of the organic carbon which is there in the soils. So these microbes are the gold mine for discovery and new innovation in terms of active ingredients which are going to be launched hereinafter to combat the pests, to improve the fertility of soil, and to manage many of the plant nutrients. Next. So the main drivers in sustainable agriculture, as I was speaking earlier, are the organic farming. The awareness about organic farming is increasing, as is evident by the huge market size it is gaining. Right now, it is gaining a size of, I will talk about in the US, it's gaining about a size of 49 USD. In the world, it is growing at a rate of around 16% of CAGR. And India has the largest number of organic farmers in the whole world. This is because we are having small acreages, many people are farming, and there are a lot of default organic farmers also in India. The second aspect is also sustainable farming. The food regulations, they are on the rise. And what exactly the consumer demand in this sector of safety of food, that is also improving. And the one aspect about improving profitability, because if the existing systems are not working, we have to have newer systems which can show us the solutions, and they can guide us through these troublesome waters. And one of the important aspects about the food and the public health waste management, these are also the drivers for managing our solid waste and crop residues, and also about the probiotics in human and animals. So these are the drivers for use of microbes in agriculture. Next. So when we are talking about these biological products, the most important aspects about the biological products are the crop improvement products are on one hand, and the biopesticides or the biological control products are on one hand. If you see on the left hand side, you can see about the fertilizers and the biostimulants. So in many of the countries, they are clubbed as microbes which are improving the growth of the plants, or the benefits which are they are imparting to plants, they are clubbed as biostimulants. But in India, we are having 2 distinct aspects about biofertilizers and biostimulants. So biofertilizers, they are mainly used in the nutrient mobilization activities, and the biostimulants, they stimulate the natural processes in the plant. So these are the main aspects wherein the microbial products they are used. Next. So as I was explaining, the biostimulants are in India. They right now they are not regulated, but government is bringing the regulation very soon in this sector. But the biofertilizers, they are already regulated, and many of them fall under the Fertilizer Control Act. So these are the microbes which can be used to mobilize the different nutrients in plants. Next. I'm just hurrying to keep up with the timing Vipinji has given us to all. So this is a rapidly growing multi-billion-dollar industry that is we call as a bionutrition and plant health. When we talk about nutrition, it is more of nutrient mobilization, wherein in biostimulants, which are working in the plant health, they are right now a $2.5 billion industry with a 13% CAGR. Next. So biostimulant market, as many of these people they envisage, it is going to be around $5.5 billion. And right now it's going to be having a CAGR of around 12%. So they are going to be an important force in how agriculture is done and how food is grown hereinafter. So when I was talking about biofertilizers right now are going to be around a $3.8 billion industry, and they are growing at a rate of around 11.2%. And many of the reputed companies, they are working in this sector in India and outside India. Next. So if you see how the microbes are used in agriculture, there are mainly specific approaches as to how they can make a place in the farmer's heart. So we have to be able to have a farmer-centric and a crop-centric approach in specifying as to how the microbes can make their place in agriculture. The technology, a lot of these companies are having tested microbes with a lot of robust formulations which are right now coming on in the market. They have a stable shelf life. Then we are able to have the OECD grade quality control which is required and in the production procedures and in the products. The perfect positioning in crop cycle, because right now chemicals have positioned themselves very well. The microbial and the bio inputs, they have to position themselves in specific aspects whereas to make a name for themselves and contribute to agriculture. They have to show compatibility with chemicals, because a lot of these microbials or the biostimulants, they should have the compatibility in order for us to be used in conventional as well as in the organic farming. And the scaling up experiments, they have to be done on a wider scale. So the microbes can be definitely used in chemical intensive farming systems as well as sustainable farming systems for growing residue-free food, and they are an important component of the organic farming, which is right now gaining a lot of importance. Next. So when I talk about the product actives right now are clubbed under biofertilizers, biopesticides, the soil health management. Now here I would like to bring your attention to this aspect about soil health management. Over the years, agriculture, wherever the agriculture systems are intense, we see that the soil systems are degraded and they are destroyed to a faster extent. The main aspect is the loss of organic carbon. When we talk about circular economy or the importance of organic carbon, we have to be able to sequester maximum amount of organic carbon in the soils. And this can only be done by microbial technologies, which can be useful in utilizing lot of the crop residues, which can be a potent force to look after our denuding soils. Then one of the important aspects about biostimulants, which our company could really position, is by utilizing biostimulants and fitting ourselves into the CIB domain, wherein we could sell our biostimulants properly. So this is the way in which Canbiosis right now is producing biostimulant. It is actually a biostimulant, but we have registered it as a plant growth promoting substance by adding minute amount of gibberellic acid, which is again a microbially fermented extract, which is done in-house at Canbiosis. And the last but not the least is the seed treatment by utilizing different plant growth promoting rhizobacteria in leguminous and non-leguminous plants. Next. So these are the uses of microbes as biostimulants, wherein the biostimulants are mainly used to improve the plant growth by providing plant growth promoting substances. They have a lot of capsules, so they lead to a lot of soil aggregate formation, and they help in the water management. Then there is an alleviation of stress, which is important by secreting different vital plant metabolites. Then habitat manipulation. This is very important because microbes which form a good association with plants and can benefit the plants, like for example mycorrhiza and other kinds of bacteria also, and fungi, they are important in habitat manipulation. The nutrient mobilization also is an important aspect wherein the plant biostimulants can fit in properly. Next. So I here wish to present before you one of our products, which in fact gained a lot of importance not only in India but also abroad, on foliar nitrogen fixation. Foliar nitrogen fixation is very important, wherein you are not trying to make the organisms work in sick soils or in soils which are having low organic carbon, but they can work on the carbon in the leaf exudates, and they can benefit the plants in a multi-dimensional manner. So this is a plant growth promoting substance secretor, which was based on Azotobacter species, which we could utilize on foliar surfaces, and it could survive in the bottle. It has a shelf life for over 2 years, and we have checked this product in over 8 crops in over 16 universities trials on different crops. Next. So these are the technology whereby the microbes can inhabit the leaf surfaces for over 3 weeks when sprayed, and it has to be used 2 times in short duration crops and 3 times in long duration crops. So basically these bacteria, they are there in cyst form, and you can see the black pigmented colonies which are there on a nitrogen free agar, and these bacteria, they secrete a lot of alginic acids, and they can in fact inhabit the leaf surfaces, and wherein we also have documented the growth of these bacteria when sprayed on the plants for a time up to 3 weeks. So we have increased vegetative vigor by PGPS action. Then they produce different kinds of amino acids and vitamins of the B groups, which are important for the plants, and they can help in improving the vegetative as well as the flowering growth. So these are positioned very well in grapes and pomegranate, and there is a improvement in action in the growth of the plants in all crops. In fact, we have done it in cereals, legumes, vegetables, horticulture, and also sugarcane. Next. Next. Yes, so these are some of the results of hormone, as we are calling it, a concoction of vitamins and hormone. And this
Sandeepa, we're running out of time, please. Just a remind.
Yes, yes, consistently in the market for over 22 years now. Next. Vipin, next. Next. Yeah, so the future technologies from soils. you mute your microphone, Vipin? So these are the future technologies from seed to harvest, wherein we can use this product, we can use the microbes from soil health management, seed treatment, soil broadcasting, foliar application, and right up to the pre-harvest. So these are not only the biostimulant sector, but the two different sectors which I mentioned earlier, where the microbes can show their potential. Next. Next. Yeah, so this is a very important aspect about the bacteria which we are companies right now working with, that if you don't like bacteria, you are on the wrong planet, because they make such a huge volume on our planet, and they are benefited in benefit agriculture in so many ways that there are only 1% of microbial diversity we have been able to extract and check. The rest 99% still needs to be isolated, explored, and it's a gold mine of different activities which are there in the environment. So I thank you all for giving me this chance, and I hand over the microphone to Vipin.
Thank you, ma'am. Very great insight into it. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Ms. Sandeepa Kanatkar, Vice Chair of the site, talking to you, speaking on importance of agri output post-lockdown and global microbial biostimulants. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Dr. Arup Ghosh, who happens to be the principal scientist at the CSIR Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute based out of Bhavnagar, Gujarat. He is an eminent scientist and academician. I would say he's an agronomist by his education, and his area of research is amazing. It's agronomy, integrated nutrient management, seaweed, biostimulants, biofuel crops, soil biology, algal biochemistry, transcriptomics, crop stress physiology, metagenomics, life cycle assessment. He's guided, supervised around about 6 PhD students, and currently he is supervising another 4. So, Arup, thank you very much for joining us in. I'll just share your PPT. Tapan, I am not able to share the content again. Something wrong? Arup, can you share?
Well,
you need to unmute yourself.
Sir, please try, sir.
Okay, I'll share. I've got it. I've got it. Just a minute. I have your over here. Okay. Now, is it visible to everybody?
well, no, it is not visible.
No.
Okay. Just a minute. Just let me go again.
Sir, just third option round, you just share your screen. Yes, sir.
Here you go. Here you go, man. Here you go. And I'm going on mute. Arup,
Yes,
over
sir.
to you.
Yes.
It is visible.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Very good afternoon to you all. Thank you, Mr. Vipin. As Mr. Vipin told, that I have been working since long on seaweed biostimulants for enhancing agricultural productivity, and I'll be speaking something on that, and also about improving soil health and mitigating climate change as well. Next, please. Next. Yeah. No, the previous one. The previous one. Yes. So many of you are aware of what are biostimulants and what are seaweeds. But many of us might not have actually seen what are seaweeds. So on the screen you can see this is seaweed. This is one seaweed called red seaweed. The name is Capophycus alvarezi, and it grows in tropical waters. It is growing in sea, you can see, and it is grown on rafts. This is a raft technology that has been developed by our institute, wherein bamboo is used and some ropes are used, and we put it out in the water, sea water, for 45 days, and we get a biomass from which we get the biostimulant. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah. No, the next one. Yeah. Okay, fine. The other slide which you saw just before that, that was seaweed that is collected naturally, natural areas we collected from. And here you can see that the seaweed is growing on huge tracts of land along the coast of Tamil Nadu. The beauty of it is that no arable land is required, no fertilizers are required, and no pesticides are required. And in a 9 square meter area, you get 200 kg of fresh algal biomass in every 45 days, 60% of which it can be converted into biostimulants. So we at CSMCRI have the expertise of cultivation methodology for quite a number of seaweeds. We have also technologies, the commercial viable technologies to get value added products from them. Just now we heard that till now in India, biostimulants have not been regulated. So now there is a process that is going on wherein the biostimulants would be regulated, and it will be under FCO as of now. Herein we have adopted the definition of biostimulants. Biostimulants are organic substances which, when applied to plant, seed, rhizosphere, soil, promotes or enhance physiological process of crops to improve input use efficiency, growth, yield, quality, as well as stress tolerance in plant and soil, that is microbes. They are neither fertilizers nor pesticides. Next, please. Yeah. As you can see, these biostimulants, they are actually being currently used in Indian agriculture. Quite a substantial amount of it is used, and most of it is imported. As you can see that these are the figures from Basai, that 50% of the biostimulants comprises of seaweed extracts, and somewhere around 1200 crores to 2000 crores will be the market share of Indian markets. And if we really start growing these in India as well, so there is a potential import substitution to the extent of around about 600 crores. Very important thing is that we have tested in several trials that up to 25% reduction in chemical fertilizers can be done when we use conjunctively the seaweed biostimulants along with the chemical fertilizer. So it is something more towards organic farming. It is a 100% organic product. We have a technology wherein this wet seaweeds, that is red Capophycus alvarezi seaweed, can be used for extracting two important things. One is biostimulant, and other is a substance called carrageenan. They are basically polysaccharides, and these have very many applications in the field. We have licensed these technologies to several players. You can see, and like this IFCO is using this Sagarika, then there is Marina. And you can see that there are different methods of cultivation of these seaweeds. Maybe it is raft method in southern part of India, whereas in western part of India, raft is not suitable, so we use tube net method. Next, please. And yeah, very important. Okay, next, please. Okay, so we have actually tested out these biostimulants, that is red seaweed biostimulants, all over the country in 20 states of India in association with about 43 agricultural institutes. It was a 5-year trial. I mean, it was an extensive trial wherein we used agro trials as well as demonstration trials. We used agro trials as well as large 1-acre demonstration trials, and the results were really very splendid. Next, please. Yeah. To the right of your screen, you can see a pie chart. So this is exactly the results summarized for the multi-locational, multi-crop trials, wherein we used this biostimulant in rice, maize, green gram, black gram, sesame, soybean, fodder, sugarcane, and potato. So these are multi-locational trials. Like rice was tried in 38 different places in India, and we got about 19% improvement in crop yields over and above the recommended fertilizer practice that is prevalent in that area. So likewise, you can see that in the pulses and oil seeds, which are very important for India, it actually gave a lot of improvement. I mean, somewhere in case of pulses, the improvement was more than 25%. So protein, I mean, we get protein from the pulses, and this is really important for a country like India, wherein we have a protein malnutrition. Besides directly, I mean, indirectly benefiting the agricultural scenario in the country, you can see the commercial farming of these seaweeds by the coastal fisherwomen. You can see in the left side of the screen a lot of coastal fisherwomen getting employed in doing this seaweed cultivation. So the idea is actually to expand the cultivation scenario to rest parts of the country where we have the coastal ecosystem that is conducive. Then also we can also see that a lot of women folk are getting employment in the manufacturing, seaweed manufacturing plant as well. So the impact is like it sequesters a lot of carbon. So we have a very important connect with climate change. So if we do seaweed cultivation, a lot of carbon gets sequestered in the seaweeds itself. It provides employment opportunity and livelihood promotion, as I told, local entrepreneurs setting up plants. We do have several licensees for our technologies, and many other technologies are getting licensed in due course of time. It has already benefited millions of acres of farm area, and it alleviates effect of soil moisture stress on crops. That is one more important part of the research we have been doing. And we have done a full carbon footprinting analysis for the products which we are developing. We can do for all others as well. You can see the seaweed biostimulants are very low carbon footprint. In fact, if I give you the figure, it is about 18.3 kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent per ton of such things produced. So overall, I mean, from the agro trials, we see that yield increase of 13 to 37% over and above the recommended dose of fertilizers can be obtained. And especially it is very important for I mean, semi-arid areas in the world where soil moisture stress is important. So it works well under soil moisture stress conditions as well. And I'll show you a few of the important next. Okay. So in very short, I'll be discussing about mechanism of actions. Here we can see that this aqua sap is actually the tropical seaweed Carpophycus, and this we have paired with the cold water species like in Canada, then Ireland and other places where cold water species are there. Ascophylum is there. If you see the amino acid profile, they are very much comparable. So we can also depend a lot on tropical seaweeds as well. They are also equally effective. This seaweed biostimulants contains a lot of plant growth hormones, that is indolacetic acid, zeatin, that is cytokinins, gibberellic acid. Just now, Madam Kanitkar told that GA3 is a very important part of biostimulants, and here we can get it naturally from the seaweed biostimulants. It also contains some quaternary ammonium compounds like choline and glycine butane, which are very good stress buster molecules, which when applied to the plants will impart the abiotic stress tolerance to the plants. You can see that there's a lot of potassium. So many of us will ask that these are cultivated in sea, in the sea conditions. And so, I mean, it will extract a lot of sodium ions in it. And when you put it in agriculture, it will be toxic to the plants. So interestingly, these seaweeds selectively extract potassium and not sodium. So that's why these are potassium rich biostimulants, which also can be used in fact to harness potassium chloride fertilizer, that is the murate of potash. I would like to say that 100% of potash fertilizers is imported in India. Not even a single gram is produced. So these type of, these technologies, if we really, go for refining these technologies, seaweeds can also be used for making these things. A lot of potassic fertilizer. Next, please.
Doc, we're running out of time. I'll give you another 3 minutes if you can just complete your things. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Next, please. Next. Yeah. While I would have been very much interested in telling you what are the mechanism of actions, you can see that photosynthesis rate is very much increased. Electron transport rate, then FV/FM ratio, and water use efficiency is actually very much improved. And antioxidant capacity of the plants is enhanced. That is why under drought condition, it gives a very good response. Next, please. Yeah, this is a slide wherein we did an experiment and we found it gives a very good response under drought condition. Not only under irrigation condition, it gives a better response in drought conditions as well. Next, please. Yeah, now you can see that under drought conditions, what is interesting is nitrogen content in the plant parts, it gets increased, and iron content in plant parts increased, which normally under drought conditions should be low. So by biostimulants, we found that the uptake of nitrogen and iron is increased. Next, please. Next, yeah, this one. A very important slide, like how this nitrogen is getting uptake is getting enhanced in the plants. To the left, you can see a figure. This is actually a root cell, wherein you can see that there are nitrogen transporters. These are these are genes in the cell membranes, which actually take up nitrogen from the soil into the plant roots. And from the plant roots, it gets nitrate is uptaken, then it gets converted into nitrite by a very key molecule, gene called nitrate reductase, which actually gets upregulated by spraying of these biostimulants or application of these biostimulants. And from this nitrate reductase is the first limiting step for protein formation or the nitrogen cycle. And that's why actually what is happening is that whatever nitrogen is inherently present in the soil, that actually gets efficiently uptaken and converted into protein. And that is why you don't have to give extra nutrition, extra nitrogen for yield increasing, and we get a better efficiency. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. If somebody wants to have a very good idea of what are the mechanism that is happening, I have these slides will be shared and it will be available to all of you. We have a very good paper on science behind biostimulant action of seaweed extracts. You can have it. Next, please. Yes, this is regarding sulfur metabolism. How the sulfur assimilation actually increases the upregulation of cysteine synthesis. That is another enzyme, very key enzyme that is important for antioxidant GSH and GSST production, and it helps in quenching the reactive oxygen species which is formed under stress conditions. So how it is abiotic stress, it is imparting stress tolerance. Next, please. Yeah, I would not go into very much detail, but the key mechanistic changes that we observed was enhanced nitrogen, phosphorus, copper uptake, better nitrogen assimilation, sulfur metabolism. Key enzymes in plant responsible for fatty acid synthesis is upregulated. It is reducing starch degradation, enhanced cell wall synthesis, reduced gibberellic acid hormonal signaling, and upregulation of genes coding towards enhanced root growth and promoting antioxidant activity. And one more important thing is repairing DNA damage. Even if there is DNA damage happening, the genes responsible for repairing it gets upregulated, and the DNA damage repairing takes place. Next, please. Next, please. So I have two more slides. The previous one, please. No, the previous one, please. No. We are actually going previous. Yeah. So apart from abiotic tolerance, we also found there is tolerance to fungus as well. Next, please. Next. Yes. So you can see, as Madam was telling, that something, if it is changing the microbial habitat, that will be wonderful thing. And this is what the biostimulants does. You can see that under stress conditions, the microbial diversity, this is a metagenomic study that has been done. And you can see under stress conditions also, the microbial diversity is as good as the normal irrigated conditions. Otherwise, under drought condition, you can see that it will be reduced a lot. Next, please. Yeah. What we did is carbon life cycle as impact assessment, that is the carbon footprint. So this is from a policy point of view that we have for the first time quantified what is sustainability portion of this seaweed biostimulants. It is very sustainable, and you measure it by what is the amount of carbon footprint per unit of crop production. So that is quite low. And I told you that 11.3 kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent per kiloliter of biostimulant. When you use such low carbon footprint for getting a high yield, for a higher productivity, you naturally reduce the carbon footprint from the agriculture portion. Next, please. Yeah, this is our efforts actually, intervention for bringing this biostimulants under fertilizer control order. Draft for public comments was issued in November 2019. So very many companies have actually given inputs for that, and the government is right now considering their inputs regarding what can be actually considered and what cannot be. And very soon we would have some or the other sort of regulation. Of course, it will take into account the MSME sector so that there is no hampering of their activities. Next, please. And that is the last slide, I believe. Yeah. And we have been actually, there have been recognitions also for the technologies, and we have been developing and will continue to develop several technologies that are useful for our farmers as well as coastal communities. Thank you very much for the patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Arup. Very nice insight in seaweeds and its regulations. This is what I was talking about, that we are still under the phase of drafting regulations for biostimulants. We await the final notification. Earlier, it was supposed to be under the Insecticides Act, but somehow it came along with the Fertilizers Control Order. So we still await, the finalization. Thank you very much, Dr. Arup. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our chair, Mr. Zuzar Kharakiwala. He happens to be the chairperson of Biological Agri-Solutions Association of India. Mr. Kharakiwala holds a bachelor's degree in pharmacy and also a master's degree in business management from the Institute of Management, Manila. He started a company known as Biostimulants Limited in 2002 and is the chairperson of it, having multiple divisions within the organization. Mr. Kharakiwala is also the chair of Aquaralis and currently the president of the Indo-Vietnam Chamber of Commerce in India. Mr. Kharakiwala is also the recipient of a AAA Award of Management from AIM Manila and the Indian Small and Medium Entrepreneurs Year Award 2014. He has also featured in a number of famous newspaper articles across within India. Mr. Kharakiwala, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vipin. I hope all of you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, let me thank ICC and on behalf of Basai for this webinar. My thrust of my presentation will be the way forward for the biostimulant sector. Now, in the last two presentations we have heard more on the technical side of biostimulants and biofertilizers and biopesticides. But my presentation will more or less focus
I'm not
on.
able to share your PPT with everybody. Mr. Tapan, we're running a technical snag. I cannot share Mr. Khurakiwala's presentation. Tapan, are you there?
There, I'm here. Okay, I'll just.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, sir.
I got it. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just get the thing. Just a minute. Somebody needs to mute their thing. There's a child crying in the back. Okay, we're on. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, thank you, Vipin. My thrust of my presentation will be on the way forward for the biostimulant sector as it exists in India. Let me just share with you our background of our organization. The previous slide, please. Previous slide, yeah. We started, we were the pioneers of biostimulant in India. We started way back in 1988 with seaweed extract as a product. And so we have had experience with this whole sector for the last over 30 years. And we have been leading this, growing this sector of biostimulant in India as we speak. And the experiences we have had as an organization, which was fundamentally founded on biostimulant way back 30 years ago. And I'll share that experience with you as we go forward. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, Vipin. Yeah. No, previous slide. Previous slide, yeah. Now we all know that, especially in India and the world over, in developing countries, food production is the key. And 60% more food will be required by 2050. And the fall in crop yields per decade due to climate change and soil degradation. All these needs intervention at the agricultural level. Now, what is happening in general, I would say, is that land cannot increase. We all know that. People are increasing. The arable land in the country is also decreasing. Urbanization is taking place at a rapid pace. Secondly, the next generation of the farming community are not encouraged to do farming, especially in India, because of marginalization of agriculture. And with the GDP growth in a country like India, the dietary habits are changing. So apart from usage of crop protection chemicals or fertilizers, the need for usage of biostimulants is a very, very key aspect in agriculture. And this has not yet been perceived in an agriculture country like India. However, as we have seen in the previous presentation, how much technical knowledge we have on seaweed and the kind of work that has been done on seaweed in India and elsewhere around the world. But this has not somehow been translated to the knowledge of the farmers. Though there are so many organizations in India, especially who are dealing with biostimulants, because it is not regulated as we have discussed earlier. The entire messaging from a commercial and a marketing standpoint needs to be completely looked at. And that is where our experience in this sector is that to sell biostimulants in a country like India, where trade is a very, very important factor, the distribution channels are very, very important. And a lot of companies, small, large, they are involved in this. But in the past, what has been happening is that a lot of smaller companies have got involved, and a lot of adulterated products, a lot of products minced with pesticides have been proliferating in the Indian market because there is no regulation. And this has given a very, I would say, a negative image on the whole category of biostimulants. But there, now in the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen a lot of good companies are looking at this sector. Next slide, please. Now, when you look at biostimulants, and if you compare the human body itself, human body also needs lipids, minerals, vitamins, carbohydrates, and minerals. Similarly, also plants require seaweeds, amino acids, vitamins, carbohydrates, and minerals. So it's a very parallel issue when you come to living things. So biostimulant as a category is something that that is essential for agriculture, and that is why regulating biostimulants by the authorities, as it is now happening in Europe and United States and many other parts of the world, is one of the key focus of not only BASAI, which is the organization we formed almost a year ago. And as we heard from the previous speaker, that the government is now considering regulating biostimulants, which will, what is going to likely happen is, once this regulation comes in place, organized companies, big or small, will be able to sell quality products to the farmers, and this will give a boost to the entire biostimulant sector as we go forward. And the next slide. So what are biostimulants? I think this has been mentioned earlier by the speakers. It's a clear distinction have been made in the agrochemical industry between pesticides, fertilizers, and biostimulants. They occupy a specific niche with products that neither add elemental nutrition nor control biotic stress, but still increase crop yields. These positive effects are chiefly due to changes in crop metabolism, hormonal signaling, and biotic stress. Despite the clear distinction in place between these three classes of agrochemicals, biostimulants can impact the crop protection market in some very interesting ways. These effects will only become larger as the market for biostimulants continues to grow and mature. And we have seen this through our own experience, though we also sell pesticides in our organization. In the last 20-30 years, we have never seen biostimulants degrow. Pesticides go up and down because of various disease pressures and various agroclimatic pressures. But we have seen the role of biostimulants, if they are marketed properly, commercially positioned properly, with quality, and the messaging is done properly to the farmers, they continue to grow once the farmer gets used to this kind of products. So the scope for biostimulants in a country like India and elsewhere is very huge. We export in our own organization, Biostat, we export our products to almost 15 countries, including China, where biostimulants and seaweed extracts are so inexpensive. And yet we are able to export our products to China, mainly because of the quality of the seaweed that we use, and the proper positioning of the product, at what stage it has to be applied, and how it has to be applied, and when it has to be applied, and what dosage has to be used. That communication to the farming community on a continuous, sustainable basis is the need. And then we see that the whole biostimulants segment continues to grow. And this whole approach has to be driven from the top. The organization has to be oriented towards selling biologicals. It is not like pesticides where you sell it as a generic pesticide on price alone, and it's dictated by price and by trade. You have to create demand generation at the farm level, at the farmer's level, through meetings, contact programs, video. Nowadays, we are doing farmers meetings on videos all over the country. So all these things are needed to establish the whole platform for biostimulants. If any organization chooses to get into this field, it is not a trade-oriented marketing that many organizations choose, that selling at a very big margins to the trade, that you will be able to sell. But it has a certain limitation at the end of the day, because farmers have to come back and buy your product again and again. And that is what we have seen over the years, that our brand, which is now Biozyme in the country, is almost a 200 crore brand, which continues to grow at a double-digit rate year on year, mainly because of the demand that the farmer has for established and high-quality products. So if you look at the market of biostimulants in India, it's, as we said earlier, it's 2,200 crore market, growing at almost double-digit 15% growth, where seaweed and amino acid account for almost 70% of the market, 40% by seaweed and 30% by amino acids. And we have seen in our own portfolio of products which have amino acids, which is a separate portfolio and a very expensive range of products, the farmers just seem to digest the product irrespective of the price, because of the quality of the product and the communication, consistent, sustainable communication we give to all our farming community all over India and outside. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so as you see, in the last 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, the foliar segment, the biological foliar segment, is growing at a very, very fast pace, from 753 crore rupees to almost 1,400 crores. The foliar segment, and the granular segment from almost 500 to almost 800 crores, combined as about 2,200 crores in India. So it is growing very, very fast in India. Next slide, please.
Mr. Khurakiwala, I'll give you another 3 minutes. We're running out of time, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Vipin. I'll finish it in 3 minutes. Next slide. Yeah, quickly, the key market drivers are obviously the political dimension, where the government wants to double the farmers' income. The Prime Minister of our country has talked a lot about seaweeds himself in the biostimulant segment. The purchasing power of the farmers is increasing. The consumers are wanting better food quality, the technological issues, ecological issues, and of course the statutory requirement for regulating these biostimulants is coming in. So all these market drivers are going to play together in the ecosystem to drive the whole business forward. Next slide, please. The challenges are, of course, that the market is highly untapped for biostimulants, as I see it. Only 40% of farmers are today are aware of biostimulants. We have done very professional market research on this, and we find that only 40% of farmers are really aware or are using biostimulants. So the scope is huge in this country. And farmers are, as I said, they don't think it is important right now, but as we go along, you will see that the whole landscape will change for biostimulants. Spurious products, I think with regulatory coming in, they will certainly get restrained. And the regulatory guidelines, as we discussed, will come in place in the next couple of months, hopefully. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I don't want to, again, on the regulatory environment, we have discussed. India is a very diverse country with different languages, different agroclimatic conditions, and therefore the challenges are huge, and the opportunities equally are very huge. Next slide. So concluding, I think our association BASAI will look at the future of the industry from a farmer consumption habits, distribution, technology, IP, and more. Regulation is, as I said again, is ramping up. European Union has taken a step forward, on regulating these products. The US Farm Bill also includes a formal definition of this category, and the market is very happy about it. So what do changes like this mean for entry into the most promising markets worldwide? Strict action needs to be taken against spurious players. And I think once all these things are done, the future of biostimulants going forward in India and in developing countries, where we are offering this product to many countries, including China, Vietnam, Philippines, Egypt, Africa, and in some parts of Europe, I think the future is very bright if it is handled and managed very well. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah. Yeah, Vipin, next. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zahar. Thank you very much for giving an insight on the future strategy of biostimulants in the country. I particularly like the fact that you've highlighted the point that where biostimulants are being actually spiked with chemical pesticides or biorational pesticides in the country, and which has raised a concern and given a bad name to biostimulants as per se in India, and as also was one of the reasons why which triggered across legislation to be drafted for regulating biostimulants. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Zuzar Khorakiwala, Chairperson Basai, talking about future strategy for the biostimulants. My next speaker will be Mr. David Ian Carden. He happens to be an international expert on behalf of Basai. He also holds the designation as a Global Regulatory Affairs Manager of Allegro. As I mentioned earlier, we have got two vice chairs. One is Ms. Kanatkar, who you heard a short while ago speaking across automobiles. We also have another vice chair, Mr. Sajid Takala from Allegro. And I am particularly grateful to Allegro for lending an international perspective as a side member to this whole issue. A little bit about Dr. David, who I'd like to just introduce it. David Carden was born in Ireland and studied agriculture science at the University College of Dublin. He moved to the United Kingdom to work as a scientific officer at the Horticulture Research Center at East Malling. There he conducted research on ornamental plant production. David pursued his scientific studies, completing a research doctorate in cell-based plant physiology at Rothamsted Research. David, I'd just like to add upon my first presentation paper was at the Rothamsted University in Harpenden in 2001. So I was glad to particularly read about Rothamsted research over there. David pursued his plant physiology research in Germany at Gießen University. I hope I pronounced it right. David moved to the industry, starting with the biostimulant company Allegro in 2003. He has managed the regulatory affairs department since 2007. David has participated in the regulatory decisions in Europe from the beginning. This led to the new fertilizing products regulation in 2019, containing a plant biostimulant category. David represents the European Biostimulant Industry Council, EIC, at the technical meetings at various European authorities. Just a slight request to both of my international speakers, David and Stefan. Since Zuzar has mentioned about spiking of biostimulants, which is a huge concern in India, if you could just lay down a perspective on what is happening across the globe in biostimulants and the field of seaweeds. So David, over to you. Thank you very much. I'll just share your presentation also.
Thank you. Thank you. While you're sharing, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Indian Chamber of Commerce and, of course, Basai organization, and I'm speaking here with my Basai hat. I work for Valagro. Valagro is present with a subsidiary also in India as Valagro Biosciences. So we have a involved interest in the developments in India. And I think this is a very exciting time, and this opportunity to speak together and compare ideas is very useful. So next slide, please. And next one again. So a similar slide to this, most people have seen. Why are we talking about biostimulants? Why are they important? The conventional agriculture production can be increased by the use of integrated crop management, which of course is nutrient fertilization, it's also biocontrol, etc., but also includes biostimulants. Also includes biostimulants, whatever the definition of biostimulants are, of course, and that is one of the subjects. So somebody is on the phone, maybe you could mute your microphone, please. Next slide, please. So what are biostimulants? What do they do? Of course, that depends on the definition. So could I ask maybe whoever's speaking on the telephone to keep themselves silent? Thank you.
May I request every other person beside the speaker to keep your video on mute, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're all learning this technology together. So, of course, depending on what the definition is, but we have seen a couple of definitions in these presentations by previous speakers, of course, and until the legislation decides what the definition is, of course, all are valid. But to give our perspective, it's something involved in improving tolerance to abiotic stress, improving nutrient use efficiency, and improving crop quality. Or they can be also other things, depending on what the definition allows for. We, in the European side, we have chosen to exclude biotic stress from the definition to not confuse ourselves with pesticides. And that is a choice that India will come to make probably as well. Next slide, please. So first of all, India. First of all, congratulations that we are even talking about biostimulants. This is a very important moment in the history of agriculture within India. And you are among the first, not the first, but among the first to be discussing this and to be actively considering a draft legislation. So this is to be recognized as a very, very important step. And I think it's a very exciting time for anybody involved in this area. Biostimulants are another tool. They are not the only tool. They are a further tool that a farmer can use. So apart from nutrient fertilizers, apart from pesticides, also, of course, water management, but biostimulants have their place as well. And previously, the BASI chairman, of course, Dr. Korakowale, I think introduced my talk very well because the technical and marketing and business aspects can flourish only if, in my opinion, if the regulatory framework is clear for everybody, for the farmer, for the authority, for the companies to operate in. So for that, what do you need? You need a clear definition of what a biostimulant is. And that, of course, there is a definition under consideration in India. The products must be safe. There must be a safe use for those products. This is very important. And if the sector credibility is to be improved, and again, I note the comments about spiking and let us say illegal use of pesticides. But apart from that, you also need for the biostimulants to work. So you must have products which can work. And so therefore we can talk about claim justification. Does the product do what you say it does? I use the word efficacy. Efficacy is a broad term. It can mean many, very many things depending on how you define that. The legislative framework must be fair and proportionate. Earlier on, Vipin, you yourself mentioned that the legislative proposal started out under the Insecticide Act and has now moved to the Fertilizer Control Order. Of course, if you have a legislative framework similar to the Insecticide Act, it's a very strict, very hard legislative approach. Fertilizers is the other extreme. So somewhere in between, there must be a place for the regulation of plant biostimulants. So it must be a fair and proportionate framework. And of course, we're here talking within ICC context as BASI. As a sector, you have to have a credible stakeholder, and BASI, although it is young, it is already establishing itself as a reliable stakeholder in this process that's going ahead. And that's a very important point. Next slide, please. So I'm give you some idea of what has happened and what is happening here in Europe, because in Europe, several years ago, we were in a similar situation that India is in now. There was an opportunity approximately 10 years ago for the fertilizer regulations in Europe to be revised. And that opportunity was taken by the biostimulant industry, because biostimulants did not exist at a European level. And they formed an organization called ABIC. So you could think about it as the equivalent of BASI today. Very few companies at the beginning, I think it was 10, maybe 11 starting out, were now more than 50. This association became then a very credible European association, which became the main stakeholder when discussing with the European authorities and other stakeholders in the legislative process. So very, very similar background, just a few years in advance. Next slide, please. So where did that all lead to? So it was mentioned previously that there is a new regulation in Europe. That is true. In fact, last year in 2019, the regulation 1009 was published, so it is a legal text now. And this is for fertilizing products, so it covers all of the fertilizing inputs, from nutrient fertilizers, soil amendments, liming materials. It also includes plant biostimulants. So plant biostimulants has been recognized as its own category within the umbrella of the fertilizer regulation. So next slide, please. And so the definition, the first point when you're talking about how to regulate, how to do whatever, you have to understand what you're talking about. The definition is the starting point, and India, of course, today is actively considering the definition. Just to give you an idea of what the definition in Europe, the legal text today in that regulation, so this is a legal term, is called plant biostimulant, and the term plant was chosen also to distinguish biostimulants in other areas, such as animals. So plant biostimulant to avoid confusion. So it is a product which has a function. So the function means that it's a claim-based approach. You're not describing what is in it, you're describing what it does. And you can see that it contains materials which, when applied to the plant or the rhizosphere, can have several effects. And you will recognize most of these: nutrient use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, quality traits, or availability of confined nutrients in the soil or rhizosphere. So this is the legal text now of what a plant biostimulant in the European Union is today. Next slide, please. So the main points, without going into detail, but could be considered in the discussion in India, plant biostimulants in Europe are in the fertilizer framework. And I think this is something, and if there is any further news on that, but our understanding is that instead of being in the Insecticide Act, it is now planted in the fertilizer control order. The approach in Europe is a federal approach. That means that you do one, I will call it a registration, and it's valid for all of Europe. You do not have to move from member state to member state. It is a claims-based definition. So whatever the definition comes out at the end, it's based on what it does rather than what it is. And that claim must be justified. I use the term efficacy in a loose way, and that is part of the requirement for placing on the market. And there must be a safe use. So the product must be safe. It does not mean it must not have any hazardous. It just means that there must be a safe way of using it. Now, in brackets, I put the term REACH, which in India, you will not be familiar with this unless you have business within Europe. REACH is the chemicals regulation within Europe, which gives a background of a lot of safety data for a lot of materials. And that is used as the backbone for the safety assessment of much of the new fertilizing regulation. And out of that, there's a lot of information generated. In India, I'm not aware of a similar legislative framework, but that does not mean that a similar idea to assess product safety cannot be based, for example, on calculation of the individual components, which in many cases are well known, their characteristics. But that is a technical point that I don't think today is the moment to speak about that. Next slide, please. And of course, Europe has its regulation now and they're implementing it. The USA, as was mentioned, they are moving. They do not yet have a legislative framework. However, in 2019, the Environmental Protection Agency published a draft guidance for a series of products, including plant biostimulants, within the current legislative framework of FIFA in the United States. So this was the official authority in the United States recognizing that plant biostimulants existed and how were they to be regulated. What happened after that was that the Department of Agriculture, USDA, published a report and delivered it to Congress. This Congress, which was in the Farm Bill, they published it 1 year later, and it was submitted just in December, a few months ago. This contains 6 different options how to legislate for plant biostimulants in the United States. And this is under consideration at the moment. So if I were in India today, I would see your not so near neighbors in Europe are moving. The United States are thinking of how to move, but they're moving. And India is already actively moving, and I think that's very good. Next slide, please. And my final remarks, so I should be able to stick within the time limit. In my opinion, for India, what should be considered? There should be a good, and what does good mean? It means that it can be used by everybody in the end and trusted. It should be fair and proportionate. There should be possible then to use legally the word biostimulant or plant biostimulant or whatever the term that is going to be used in the legislation. You should be able to clearly make biostimulant claims. This will lead to credibility for the industry. Also, industry requires a predictable process to go to market. There must be a timeline and an investment reasonably sure for industry to invest in this technology. And this is important for Indian agriculture and Indian agriculture within the world context. One label for all states in a federal approach. As much as possible, it should be avoided state by state legislation where there are differences. This can make business quite difficult. There should be a safety assessment. Of course, that is a big argument, a big subject to discuss, but it cannot be ignored. And we talked about briefly pesticides before and what we call multifunction ingredients. This is an important point which has been accepted clearly within the European context, that particular ingredients, be they substances or microbes, they can have more than one effect depending on how they are used. The traditional candidate that's mentioned in the fertilizer world is copper. Copper is an essential micronutrient, but of course it's also a fungicide. And the correct use in a different context means how it's being used. The scientific world is full of examples of a particular microbe which can have both biostimulant and pesticide type actions, but how you formulate that, how you apply, when you apply, that can be dictate, for example, the balance of the biostimulant and the biocontrol aspect. So my suggestion is that India does not block in a blank way just because a particular substance or a particular microbe happened to be registered in the past by somebody as a pesticide. Do not automatically block the possibility that that substance or that microbe could have a different effect in different situations and legitimately could be used in a plant biostimulant, for example. And the last point, and then I'll stop, global consistency. I think for any industry within India, any company within India looking at the global market, if you operate in a legislative framework which is as much as is possible aligned with the international context, it makes your business much easier. And I think this is something to consider as very, very important. Again, I think that's my last slide. I shall stop there. I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. We will be there with you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for giving us an insight in the Europe and the US regulatory status. Just a few things I'd like to add upon here, David, and for the audience, that India, under its draft regulation guidelines published, are considering to I mean, though it has come out of the Insecticides Act, but if you see, you've got traces of toxicology into it, right? Like acute and ecotoxicology, which is being debated upon further, and hopefully it may be restricted only to acute, oral, and dermal, is what we wish. But otherwise, one good thing is that we don't have to go into any chronic or subchronic kind of thing which goes into chemicals. I like your comment about one label. In India, things are generally regulated centrally from the central government, and the state governments have to follow. So we normally do not have separate state legislations going on for products, even in the case of crop care products also, crop protection products also. So that is one thing great across. You also spoke about the tolerance limits on various nutrients being as a nutrient and as a crop protection product also and all. So that is where in the draft guidelines, if you may have noticed, they have given tolerance limits. So if you cross a particular tolerance limit and it classifies as a registered pesticide or a biopesticide, then you have to go over to the Insecticides Act and get it there. But if it is well within the tolerance limit, then it classifies as a biostimulant. So that point was very well taken across. You mentioned of you're not aware of a REACH kind of legislation in India. India, for the past decade, has been working on something like that. Earlier, it was being debated upon as the National Chemical Inventory. Recently, there has been a draft which was under debate and consultation with the government across the globe. We had various participants with a stakeholder meeting organized by the Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals earlier in May this year. It's known as the Draft Chemical Safety and Management Rules. So this will be having something what you call REACH out over there. So India is working close towards it. And before I end, just one last point. I do agree, and India, I can assure you, is working towards harmonization of guidelines, because we know that if we want to be compatible globally, we need to harmonize our guidelines. And now with the good laboratory practices coming across in India, I'm sure you're aware of signatory mutual acceptance data. So therefore, under GLP, all data can be acceptable elsewhere. So that is where the harmonizing point comes across. So thank you very much, David. It's been a great insight, and I look forward to working further across to you along to help frame and share out your experience with the Indian government on drafting an appropriate legislation for biostimulants. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. David Carden speaking on developments and APIC and in the USA regarding plant biostimulants. Our next speaker is Dr. Stephen Cran, who happens to be the president of ISA, the International Seaweed Association, and happens also to be the CEO of the Seaweed Company. A brief introduction of Dr. Cran. Dr. Cran was born in Netherlands. He graduated with an MSc degree in marine biology at National University of Groningen, the Netherlands. Moved over to Ireland to pursue a PhD on phylogenetics and aquaculture of edible seaweeds at the National University of Ireland, Galway. In 1998, he became manager of the Irish Seaweed Industry Organization in 1998 and finished his PhD in the year 2001. He established the Irish Seaweed Center in 2001, a dedicated R&D center for seaweed-based research and development, which was launched in 2001. After managing the Seaweed Center for 9 years, Dr. Ken resigned from the university life in 2009 to pursue and develop some commercial ideas using seaweeds for a variety of purposes, among them functional food ingredients for fish farming and novel algae cultivation systems for biofuel production. That's quite impressive, Dr. Cran. I need to separately talk to you on that point also. So Dr. Cran is currently now the co-founder and the scientific director of Ocean Harvest Technology Limited, a company that has produced ocean feed, which is a trademark, a seaweed-based functional feed ingredient for the animal and aquaculture farming industries. He is involved in the development of large-scale seaweed biomass cultivation programs for the bioethanol industry and exploring protein extraction from seaweeds for animal feed industries. He has been recently elected a vice president of the International Seaweed Association. He's president. So that overtakes the previous statement. His main field of expertise is in aquaculture of seaweeds, sustainable development of algal resources, industrial application of seaweeds, and usage of seaweeds in animal feed, aquaculture, biotechnology, and biomedicine. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Cran, our last but not the least. Dr. Cran, we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, yeah, I think the biography that you just used is an old one, because at this moment I'm already past president. I had the previous 3 years, and you just mentioned their vice president. And I also have.
I corrected myself. I corrected myself, remember?
But that is fine. Well, first of all, let me thank you, Basai, first of all, and the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me. It's much appreciated. And what we just have seen with most other speakers, it is either focused on India and often on biostimulants. Now, Dr. Bush actually talked about seaweeds. My focus will be more on seaweeds because that is my background for the last 35 years. And nowadays I work in a company called the Seaweed Company, and we also have actually a subsidiary in Tuticorin in India, where we grow Gracilaria and Cappaficus. But first, before I go into that, I'll try to sketch the scene and what I said, for example, Dr. Sandeepa, but also Dr. Ghosh, they've already alluded a lot of these things, but nonetheless, I go through a couple of things myself. Next slide, please. So what is the big problem for us in the 21st century? Well, one that we are all very aware of is the growing population. And that needs an enormous boost in agriculture, because we have to feed these people. The other problem is by eradicating poverty, we have an increase in low and middle incomes. And there you see a dietary transition, which means from a cereal-based kind of food, they move to meat and fruit and vegetables, and they all need inputs from agriculture to actually create that. So that will increase. The whole green revolution has long passed. Most arable land is already cultivated. Fertilizers are used to that. So we need different systems, different ways of increasing that agricultural production. The growth and yields of agriculture has actually, well, compared to the population growth, slowed quite considerably. And so far that it is actually becoming uncomfortable. The other thing that the speakers haven't addressed, and this is something that we as a society should start looking into much more, is food loss and waste. A lot of our food that is not eaten is basically gone. And if we would focus on that, that alone would already lessen the pressure on agriculture production. Now, then there is other factories, which is an increase in resource use for increasing agriculture. By doing that, we get a loss of biodiversity, you get increase of pests and other diseases that also spread, and many of which become resistant of the pesticides used at the moment. And over that, you can then drape like a curtain of climate change and natural disasters, and we are arriving in a situation that nobody wants to be into. Next slide, please. So how are we going to satisfy the demand of agriculture? By not reducing biodiversity, natural resource use, deforestation, land degradation. The over-reliance of nitrates, phosphates, and potassium is another issue. And if you look at especially phosphate, it's a nutrient that is basically disappearing with an alarming rate, because phosphate is not infinite. There's two large mines, one in China and one in Morocco. They have reached about 40% of their yield that is still there to be used, and most phosphate is through runoff washed into the sea, into the deep sea. So either we're going to mine the deep sea for phosphate, or we're going to do some nutrient recycling, and this is where seaweed will play a very important role. Depletion of soils is another issue, and I just give an example here in Iowa. This was in 2014 during a couple of storms in spring, and they lost 14 million tons of fertile soil, just blown away. So the whole soil degradation is an important issue. Then you get desertification, salinization. You have effect of the soil flora, and that is just an issue that is playing a big role in the States and in Europe, because in pig farming or swine industry, they used a lot of zinc oxide to control gut health and get disease at bay. But the zinc oxide disappears into the land, and that has a dramatic effect, so we have learned now, on the soil flora. And about 33% of soils now globally are degraded. Next slide, please. So what we need is an increase in production, and we all know this. And below you see a table where they predicted the increase in the production in 2005 to what it should be in 2025, so in 5 years' time. Now, that was a prediction that might not be completely correct with the current data and figures, but there is quite an increase, especially in cereal crops. We're talking about more than 40%, but also oilseed crops or perennials, it's all between 25 and 40%. So how are we going to do that? Next slide, please. If we look at the current status, and again, these figures have been mentioned by previous speakers, it's a huge market. There is a lot of scope for growth, and especially in the organic trade, biostimulants from sustainable produced resources seen over a 10% growth in the last decade, or especially the last 5 years. And what is the difference between the normal, what I call fertilizers, and the organic fertilizers? Well, one, the potassium, phosphate, nitrates, they're basically plant nutrients, and that's it. The organic fertilizers, like the biostimulants, they do much more than just plant nutrients. They have a cascade of effects on plant stimulants, on organic matter, on soil flora, all kind of things. Next slide, please. So where is the growth? And again, with the color codes, you see where different graphs are applicable to. So North America and Europe are in the industrial countries on the left. You have China there, and India being third here in fertilizer use. And with the prediction what is in the past and what it will be in 2030. And well, there is a huge growth, and even in transitional countries, there will be substantial growth. Next slide, please. So what about seaweeds? First of all, seaweeds should and will be a big part of the solution globally. Because if we look currently in Asia, there is already 30 million tons of seaweed being grown. And seaweeds are very good in taking up nitrates and phosphates. And if we're talking about runoff from land, from agricultural use, which is washing out into the sea, seaweeds can take this up. They can be harvested, used as biostimulant, fertilizer, or animal food, but at least you do nutrient recycling. Secondly, seaweeds, they take up CO2 through seawater, not directly, of course, but indirectly. And of course, in that way, we're talking about climate change. Seaweeds are perfect there for taking up CO2, and we're talking about per square kilometer of seaweed cultivation, it's 1 gigaton of CO2. Then seaweeds, they're very high in potassium, and this is why KSAP, for example, Capaphytus, is used. because it has a very high mineral content. So in a way, seaweeds have the perfect combination of minerals, but also plant stimulation compounds, where they have an effect on soil, on plant metabolism, on gene expression in the plants that is affected, where they are better resistant to certain abiotic stresses like heat, frost, or drought. And in that way, we create a circular economy of nutrient recycling. Next slide, please. Now, seaweed extracts, it's definitely not new. This already started after the Second World War, where certain plants here in Western Europe and in North America, Ascophyllum is one, Fucus is another one, were already extracted and made into liquids and used as either crop protection or increasing mineral and nutrient content in soils, stimulate bacterial growth in soils, etc., etc. Now, in the last, I would say, 20 years, we start to learn a lot more. There are certain unique polysaccharides in seaweeds, like the fucoidans or laminarans, that have specific functions in plant health. Especially laminaran is known to have an antiviral effect of certain plant diseases. Fucoidans also have certain effects in the soil. From the 80s to the 90s, it was thought that the growth hormones in seaweeds, like the auxins, gibberellins, betaines, were doing all these kind of tricks in plants, but now we start to understand that's not the case. And Dr. Gosch already showed you how gene expression works and what compounds have effects there, and this is where it's all leading at the moment. Next slide, please. This is just a kind of a schedule where you can see what the mode of action is. And basically it's divided in 4 different color or 5 different color groups, where in purple are the effects on the soil. In blue, it's abiotic stress reduction through gene expression, for example. Then biotic stresses, so that can be pests and diseases where it has an effect on plant metabolism, that certain compounds are made or stimulated, etc., etc. So this is basically an overview of everything that's happening with biostimulants, and especially in this case, zooming in onto seaweed biostimulants. Next slide, please. Now, I'm just showing here some examples, but you're all very familiar with this, what it can do on plants, where we have root development, rhizoid development, better yield, fruit onset, resistance against certain pesticides. And what I said, this is in a lot of cases old hat, because a lot of these things have been discovered already in the 80s, but because of fertilizer use, because of pesticide use, there was never a push or a development to start looking at this. Only now in modern society, when we look at sustainability, resource pressure, this is becoming much more interesting, because we have something here that is sustainable. You can grow seaweeds, you can take up the nitrates, phosphates from seawater, and then recycle them with all the other benefits that it might cause in plant growth. And next slide, please. So especially abiotic stress, and I'm not going into this aspect, there is a lot of studies here. It's all based on seaweeds, different effects from seaweeds on plant development, plant growth, fruit development, especially because Dr. Harold Gosch has already presented this. Next slide, please. But those polysaccharides, they haven't really been mentioned, and we see especially laminaran and fucoidans have a lot of interesting effects, elicitor kind of effects in plants. And that is not only plants, we also use fucoidans, for example, now to stimulate immune health in people. And there's a certain set systems, which we call pathogen-assisted mononuclear pathways, where certain receptors are triggered, and the same as in plants, that then stimulate a certain process. So it all has to do about gene expression in plants as well as in humans as well as in animals, that these beautiful polysaccharides from seaweeds have an effect on it. Next slide, please. Now, what I said, it's not entirely new. The last 10 years, we see a lot of interesting reviews on seaweed biostimulants coming out, and I've just listed 5 or 6 reviews on the left side. You can look them up if you like. Here are the references. Our own company as well, we've been developing now biostimulants from ascophyllum, but not only seaweed, we also combine it with other things like humic and fulvic acids to stimulate plant growth, and we've done quite a bit of trial work. Next slide, please. And that is mainly in rice, and in this case in Myanmar and China. And we see the effects, and here you see some figures on what the yields and increases are, and also the price to use liquid extracts, seaweed liquid extracts or biostimulants. And no surprise, most work has been done in India. And again, the references are there for you to look up if you were interested. But it's all Indian colleagues who have been looking at this, how to increase these crops. And of course, rice, vitally important for food security, especially in the mid-tropical belt. Most countries are dependent on rice. So if we can increase that and improve soils with biostimulants from seaweeds, that would be great. Next slide, please. So again, gene expression and just some examples there from papers that have really come out in the last 5 years on freezing tolerance, drought tolerance, resistance to disease, immune responses. And again, you can look them up. They are available on ResearchGate. And this is where it's all going for the next foreseeable future. How can we manipulate genes to do or to produce extra compounds, stimulate certain pathways to prevent disease or be more resistant against disease or handle drought and frost or other abiotic stress. And especially if in view of climate change, this is going to be vitally important. Next slide, please. So just to sum it all up, and again, these are only studies that you see listed here based on seaweed biostimulants or liquid seaweed extracts. Just to illustrate what it all has effects on, from root up to fruit onset and fruit production. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we see benefits through soil applications and we see benefits through foliar applications. And what we saw from previous speakers, foliar applications are becoming more popular and are going to be more used in the future. We see what it does in soil, we see what it does on the plant. And if we look at our globe and human society, increasing population, climate change, increasing pests and other natural disasters, then liquid seaweed extracts will form part of the solution. It's a sustainable way of increasing production through recycling of nutrients while improving soils and improving higher yields in intensive agriculture systems and improving plant defenses and resistance to abiotic stress in our rapid changing world. And that's where I would like to stop and leave my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And of course, if there's questions, let's move on.
Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate your insight in liquid seaweed, and I particularly like the subject you talked about on food loss and waste, which has to be taken into account of. I really appreciate the talk for the fact that it addresses not one but two, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One, life underwater, and the other, life to support life on land. So seaweeds being, underwater, cultivating it, extracting it, getting it into a good stuff, and then trying to support life on land. So thank you very much, Stephen, on that part. I also would like to raise a point over here that Seaweeds, as spoken by most of our eminent speakers over here, seaweeds are not a common, I mean, on every coast of every country and all, you find different species and things going on with a different, metabolic content going across it. So therefore, it becomes everybody's natural, what I say, natural treasure in this regard. And having looked upon it by the Tamil Nadu government recently in January, had announced that they are looking forward to have consultations on framing a marine policy within the state, as it lies mostly on coastal area India. So thank you very much, Stephen. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Stephen Cran, President ICA and CEO of the Seaweed Company, talking on liquid seaweed extract, current status and future. I believe we may be having time for some. Yes.
Yeah, I suggest that now the question and answer session is starting. You can have a time. You can take some time, around 15, 20 or a half an hour also. So that's not a problem.
That's fair enough. Okay, just a quick announcement. On behalf of BASAI and ICC, we will be, circulating and first preparing proceedings of this webinar, which will be shared with every delegate. We will be seeking separate permissions from our eminent speakers if they may permit us to share their PPTs if possible for the same. We have a question on any specific trial of scientific data that how microbial biostimulants applied to foliar interact with the leaf cuticle morphology and stomatal aperture and affects its efficiency, which may be helpful in deciding the doses and phenological growth stages. So I'm not, this is from Rajendra P. Singh. So would any of the panelists like to address this question? Any one of you? David, Ghosh, Dr. Ghosh?
Yeah, I mean, not exactly what the questionnaire has raised, but we have some publications wherein what he wants is addressed. Which are the stages, how it is to be applied, are all the stages the biostimulants are effective? We have answers to those questions, and I can share the publication detail also with the concerned person.
Okay, fair enough.
You just need to write to me in my email ID. It is arupghosh@csmcri.ris.in, or he can take it from you also.
That's fair enough. We'll request all participants that they may even email their or try to communicate their questions to us, and we'll come back to you with appropriate answers from our panelists. Sandeepa, would you like to say anything on that question?
Yeah, the biostimulants, basically many of these microbes, and these when applied to the roots or when applied to the leaves, they bring about significant improvement in the vegetative and the reproductive growth. So this has been assessed by many university field trials, and if they are interested in getting the data, definitely they can write to me and I can share the details of the same.
Thank you, Sandeepa. I have another question. Would any of the other speakers like to say something on this question? Brian, Stephen, David? No. Okay. I have a question from one Mr. Shekhar Varshane. He asks how the authenticity of a seaweed extract product can be tested. So, Stephen, Ghosh, this question lies to you.
Well, I'm myself at the moment in the standards agency in the EU, where we're going through this discussion on biostimulants and how to validate claims, because that is basically what it is. So there are probably standardized trials with standardized plants that you can use for this to basically measure effects from a biostimulant on either whatever you want to test or want to prove. That can be an abiotic stress, but also a plant effect on yield or root growth. So that is still being standardized because it is a little bit the Wild West at the moment. And people just apply and use what they see fit and then claim something. And I think David, because he's especially in regulatory, he probably knows more on this than me.
Okay. Before we go to David, Stephen, another it's probably a continuation to this. It's more like a question that, like in India, seaweed extracts are sold in different names, suitable for different crops. Like tea may have something else, fruits may have something else. So, are there different seaweeds acting specifically for different crops, or it is just the kind of dosage thing that is affecting the physiology of the plant or the different crop category?
No, that's a very good question, actually, because there is most definitely a difference. If you make an extract from sargassum, for example, the drift seaweed that one of the speakers showed in slide 2, that contains those unique polysaccharides like laminarin and fucoidan. If you use Copperficus and make KSAP, you don't have these polysaccharides because they do not exist in red seaweeds. Then you have other polysaccharides like carrageenan. That might have a very nice kind of antiviral effect on certain diseases, but has to be tested, of course. So there is a big difference between seaweeds.
Okay, fair enough. I have two questions. Any of you may kindly answer. These two questions come across by various discussions with various people. There are two things. One, biostimulants does increase the plant health, helps maintain its vigor, more flush, more greenery and things like that. But there's a question that do some overuse or excessive use of biostimulants or a healthier crop also attract more vulnerability to pests and disease? I know if the stronger a plant, it will have more immunity to fight across. But in some cases, it has been reported that plants treated by biostimulants actually attracted more pests. Is that true? I mean, can you please just give me some light on it? Any idea?
Well, I can give my 2 cents word. We use most of the biostimulants from seaweed at like 2 to 4 liters per hectare. And that is just to elicit its function in plants to start a certain process, metabolic process, or to affect gene expression. If you use too much, too often, you get a coating on your leaves, and seaweeds, 40%, they are sugars. Those polysaccharides are sugar-based compounds. So they will attract certain other pests and diseases if not used in the right way.
Okay, and another one, this is probably just as a comment over here, that looking into the latest locust infestation across the globe, especially in India, it has come across even now to northern India. So my question is that if a crop is temporarily damaged, not completely devastated, but temporarily, to a certain extent, say 40, 30%, 60%, devastated by a locust infestation. Can biostimulants, either seaweed-based or other microbe-based, help the plant to actually regain its vigor and may not affect the harvest in that kind of sense? I know it sounds a slightly vague question, but I couldn't help resist myself from asking.
I'm not going to answer every question here, so let the other in the panel as well.
Dr. Ghosh.
No. I don't think there is any such study that has been made. What you are telling about rejuvenation, we have heard it from the farmers using some of the seaweed products, but that is in relation to drought stress. I have not heard anything regarding locust. locust damage.
Okay, I mean, this just came in across to the latest scenario going across, where it just popped out of. So there is another question for all of you. This is regarding the heavy metal contents in biostimulants. It is argued upon that certain heavy metals such as arsenic behave differently when it is in an organic form or it is an inorganic form. So both organic and inorganic content of arsenic will have a different impact or impact on its heavy metal content in a biostimulant. So anybody would like to address that on a legal perspective? Probably David.
Well, arsenic content is one of the heavy metal limits that are in the new European regulation. Because the new European regulation tried to take an approach to have as many possible input materials as possible to help the circular economy, it was important also to limit contaminants. So arsenic is one of the list of limits. So your product must not contain above a certain amount, and that depends if it's liquid or solid, and if it's organic, organo, mineral, etc. Arsenic is a particular story because I'm not a chemist, but my chemistry colleagues tell me that the difference between total arsenic, inorganic, organic arsenic is important, this distinction. So therefore it needs to be discussed very, very much, I think.
I might add something on this.
Yes, please.
Arsenic in seaweeds has always been a hot topic of debate, and because they were looking in first instance at total arsenic, often which were frowned upon as being too high. But most arsenic in seaweeds is organically bound and is easily metabolized, so they do not pose a threat. And I'm especially talking about human health and animal health. And inorganic arsenic levels in seaweed is actually relatively low. And talking about 2 or 3 ppm, and that is not an issue. While total arsenic can be 40 up to 70, and the most famous example is Ezekia from China, which can be 70 to 90 to over 100. And sometimes, because it's human food, it can still be imported, but it needs a health warning. Because in the end, people are self-regulating, you determine how much you eat, but for animal feed, that's a different story, and it has to adhere to EU legislation to be able to be used.
Thank you very much, David and Stephen, for your clarifications. I have a question for Mr. Zuzar. It is it's a question from one Rajendra P. Singh. He says, to deal with phytohormones, there must be dedicated facilities, whether imported or these are made in India. Zuzar sir, would you like to respond?
Well, you see, I mentioned that in my comments that you need to have a dedicated facility for biostimulants. You cannot manufacture or you should not rather manufacture biostimulants where chemicals and pesticides are being manufactured, which is typically the case in majority with the manufacturers, because contaminations of pipes and all kinds of storage and aerial contamination, all these take place. And therefore, dedicated facility is a requirement if you have to deliver consistent, sustainable quality products to the farmers. I think, as I said in my presentation, that if you deliver sustainable quality over a period of time on a biological product, then you will see the traction that takes place in the marketplace. And therefore, a dedicated facility is very, very important to manufacture any kind of biologicals, And as a company for last 40 years or 35 years, we always had dedicated facilities for our manufacture. Pesticides are manufactured somewhere else, or biologicals are manufactured completely separately. So I think it's a must, I feel.
So we have the facilities in India to do so.
Sorry?
We have the facilities to do so in India.
Yeah, I think, but I think a lot of these manufacturers, I know, do not have it. They do it under the same infrastructure, and the chances of contamination and all these things arise at a point of time.
Thank you, Suzan. I have a question for Sandeepa and David both. I believe both of you will have to address it. It's from Manish Singh. He says, any specific trials, scientific data that how microbial biostimulants applied through foliar interact with the leaf cuticle morphology and stomatal aperture and affects its efficiency, which may be helpful in deciding the doses and phenological growth stages. So over to David and Sandeepa.
I will go for a non-technical answer. I'm not the agronomic scientific expert now, but the trial, whatever efficacy trial is selected to demonstrate your claim, whatever system India will choose, the trial must match what your claim is on the label here in Europe. So you either design your trial to illustrate what your claim should be, or you have your claim and you do the opposite way. The end result is what you are looking for, but it depends also how specific you write your claim. And the beauty of the system is, depending on how specific you have your claim, you design the trial to justify that claim. So somebody might have a very general claim, and somebody might have a very specific claim, such as this, but the end benefit should be clear.
Sandeepa, would you like to say something else?
A nice manner. One thing.
Sandeepa, your voice is not coming.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, now it's fine. Thank you.
Biostimulants, lot many claims are attached to many biostimulants, and the validation of those claims is extremely important. So this is predominantly done through assessment via proper randomized field trials, and then the observations which really come out of that under different circumstances, because many of the biostimulants, they are claiming some anti-stress kind of effects, and which really affect the plant growth in a positive manner. So these claims have to definitely be validated. And as regards to what we are doing with respect to canbiasis, with respect to microbial biostimulants, is that we are assessing the microbiome of the healthy plants, and then we are trying to find out which kinds of microbes they inhabit those niche places, and then depending on that we are trying to get to the point where microbial biostimulants can show us those desired effects. So to cite an example of foliar biostimulants, when we started looking at different phylospheres, we found that many of these nitrogen fixing bacteria have a competitive advantage for survival on the foliar surfaces, because they can utilize the carbon exudates in a very good manner. So when we carried out the screening program, we consistently found many microbial, competitive nitrogen fixing bacteria to be present over there. And when we assessed their metabolites, then we could gauge that, okay, they were not great nitrogen fixers, but they were great producers of plant growth promoting substances or different kinds of vitamins. So you have to be able to validate the claims with respect to the effect on the plants, and then get the results on the university field trials in different crops with different usage, and then maybe claim whatever you have to claim on the label. So definitely, yes, each of the claim has to be validated in a specific or a generalistic manner. But many of the people, they don't go in for lot many field trials, because that is very expensive, and you cannot really pinpoint it like an active chemical. So the assessment of microbiome, it has got lot of importance, and I must say it has a lot of basic research also involved. So I really would like to, in fact, talk to Mr. Arup Ghosh also regarding that there are the whole genome analysis also right now is being done, wherein each genetic sequence is being assessed for a specific metabolite and the effect it shows on the plants. So these all things also will contribute towards, finding out why a microbe is useful, how it is working, when it has to be used, in what dosages, so that it will show the results on the plants. So a lot of research definitely will come out, and I'm sure it is for the better of agriculture.
Yes, I do believe what Madam said is absolutely correct. There'll be a lot of research that will need to be done. Some of them are being done. A lot of metabolomics work is in the foray. I would like to add that, yeah, I mean, the specific answer to the question is yes, we do have some research publication which addresses how it affects the photosynthetic rate, how it is affecting the stomatal conductance studies, then how it is affecting the water use efficiency. So these some of the answers we do have. Regarding what India has chosen, how the trials are to be done, basically you have to approach agricultural university, that is state agricultural university or an ICR institute. These are the part of agriculture research system in India. And what you need to do is 3 independent trials at 3 different locations. So if you are getting the efficacy results good, then this will be, validated. This is with reference to the FCO guidelines that is right now there. There might be changes, but as of now, that is the thing. So 3 different trials at different locations. So 3 locations for a crop.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. I believe there was a typographical error in the draft guidelines, wherein the Director General Indian Council of Agriculture Research probably clarified that it would be 4 locations. So there is a question in this regard that, there are many small players in this field in biostimulants, and therefore regulations should not be at a high cost that may affect the industry itself. But I do believe that regulations need to be reasonable, so they can be actually regulated at a reasonable cost under a reasonable justification. And then again, compliance does come at a cost, the general issue. Sorry.
City part, I mean, there has been some consideration that if there are data anywhere in the world for a product that it is non-toxic, those would be accepted. So that is something, that might be something that was discussed already. You were also there in that meeting.
Yeah, Doc. India being a MAD signatory, any data, generated under GLP will be acceptable.
Right.
Yes, one of that. I have a question for Dr. David. David, there is a question from some Learn Haka. On what basis the seaweeds are getting registered in EU? Amino acid content, cytokinin content, or auxin/gibberellin content?
Okay, so good question. The answer is it depends. In this new regulation, first of all, the defining aspect is the claim. So you could have a seaweed-based product, which is a plant biostimulant, or it could also be, for example, an organic fertilizer bringing potassium. And this is a fundamental choice of the producer, the company at the beginning. Which claim do you have associated? Then the characterization of that substance depends on you as a company, but the REACH regulation, which is behind all of the chemical substances in Europe, requires characterization. And the characterization for a complex mixture such as a seaweed extract depends on the seaweed starting material. We've heard today many different species. It depends on the extraction process, and you as a producer can define that. So the legislation does not tell you must have a minimum amino acid or minimum gibberellic acid or whatever. It's up to you as an industry. And a further point, there is no required reason to have a mode of action in terms of how does your product work. That is not required in the new legislation in Europe. It's required that it works, but you're not necessarily required to explain how it works. This was a decision because research, as we've heard today, research will go on for all the time. It will never finish. That is the nature of research. And so you could say, well, my product works. I'm not sure why, but it works. And of course, then as a company, you might decide to add value by saying, I think it works because, but the legislation does not require you to do that as part of the registration process.
Thank you. I have a series of questions from one Ashok Alpi. I'll just read them. He says that it's an open question. Some seaweed don't contain PGR, but it contains high organic matter. Do you think it should be classified as vegetable fertilizer instead of biostimulant?
If you want, I'll take that question again because it links into the claim. So
okay.
The approach we have in Europe and what I've seen of the draft in India, it's a claim-based approach. So if your seaweed product, you are using it to bring organic matter or nutrient content, it is not a plant biostimulant. It is an organic fertilizer or it is a potassium fertilizer. If you want to have a claim on the label that is a plant biostimulant, then it really doesn't matter how much organic matter is in there as long as it says what it says. So it depends on the claim. The starting point is the claim. What does my product do?
Okay. I have some good news also. Everybody has appreciated everybody's presentations. Dr. Ghosh, you probably have earned a notch, one star more than above the others. But yeah, that's something people are coming across. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone wanting to ask a question, they may please raise their hand by clicking on the switch on the right, raise hand. If there's anybody who would like to, have any other question asked, please be free to ask our panelists. Otherwise, we'll call it a day in a short while. There is another question I've just come across. I'm just saying it. I'm not sure whether I've read it, but which molecular / physiological mechanism underlines the observed biostimulatory action? And can the same be achieved by balanced nutrition, as nutrients are precursors of many of the biostimulants? It's an open question. Would anybody like to answer it?
I think Dr. Arup Ghosh is the specialist in this. If you see his graphs and how the effect on gene expression and what happens metabolic, it's incredible.
Dr. Ghosh?
Yeah, there are a lot of mechanisms which are actually taking place, and I think in the presentation I even gave the reference. I mean, if one wants, you can always, even if he wants, I can send a PDF copy of it as well. There are many physiological mechanisms which is actually doing it. In fact, there are a lot many transcription factors that are getting affected. There are many cell wall mechanisms that are getting affected. A lot of stress enzymes getting overexpressed, nutrient transporters, then nitrogen assimilation pathways are getting affected. So, I mean, the whole detail one can read. The other part of the question, that can some nutrients also trigger these mechanisms? Partly yes, partly no. Of course, there are different nutrients, and these are plant essential nutrients. It can do, but there are many other compounds which are actually doing this. So it is not only the nutrients, because the nutrient as per se, these are in very low quantities. So what we in the beginning said, that biostimulants are not for nutrients. They are not fertilizers. It does contain potassium, but you cannot qualify them as fertilizers, because ultimately the amount of it which goes into the crops or the soil or the land, it is very minuscule as compared to the crop requirement. So there are many other elicitors, there are many other compounds, many of them are still, I'll say, not known. Some are known, many of them are not known. So these are the triggers which actually does such mechanism. I think I was able to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah, I would like to just add one more thing to what Dr. Ghosh has suggested. Yes, definitely we cannot define the plant nutrition in an aspect right now which is understood by many. By this, I mean that by the randomized block design trials or whatever, even if we give the nutrients in a specified manner with respect to soil testing on an optimal basis also, which are targeting with respect to some yield, still addition of biostimulants is giving you effect on over and above that. So that it really shows that biostimulants are acting in a manner which is not exactly understood by the conventional, you can say, plant science dynamics. So the elicitors and the hidden hunger of the plants, totally it substantiates this activity. So I totally agree with Dr. Ghosh on this.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll take one last question since people are not, I mean, I'm not seeing any raised hands or any questions coming across. There is a question from V. Narasimha Murthy. When we can expect finalization of guideline of data requirement for biostimulant, whether it is in Fertilizer Act or insecticide. I'd like to answer that. It is under the Fertilizers Control Order now, and it has its challenges, and it has been finalized is what we are told, and we await the final notification since it is configured under the existing fertilizer control order under the Essential Commodities Act. Therefore, it has to be gazette notified, and we await, but there is always a possibility that maybe there may be another stakeholder consultation prior to notifying this. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Vipin Sani from Basai signing off on this thing. I thank all my panelists to having given their insight and expertise in this. My gratitude to all speakers for actually dealing with me on my late night sessions with their things in and out, and crazy things happening with the time difference across the globe. David, Stephen, my specific gratitude to you. You've been working against time with us in our normal time. Dr. Ghosh, Sandeepa, and Zuzar, really grateful to you all. My special thanks to the Indian Chamber of Commerce, especially when they are celebrating the 95th anniversary of existence. So, Tapanda and team, thank you very much. Warm congratulations to all of you. And ladies and gentlemen, over to Tapan Chattopadhyay. Tapan. Tapan Dada, would you like to say some, a kind of word of thanks or something? You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So, at the end of this session, on behalf of ICC, we'd like to thank Basai for not only associating with us, but also supporting this program. Congratulations to Dr. Khorakiwala, Madam Sandeepa Kanitkar, Dr. Arup Ghosh, Dr. David Carden, Dr. Stephen Kran for attending this, deliberating the various issues, and also for making this session a very, very interesting in almost all respect as far as the seaweed, as far as the biostimulant is concerned as of now in India. In these connections, I am also extending my thanks to our sponsors, the corporate sponsors, Compo Export India Private Limited, and also the supporting partners, RM Biotech and Prabhat Fertilizer. And special thanks to, once again, Mr. Vipin Sani for his continuous support and work with me to make this program a huge success. We request that if any of the delegates have any question pertaining to any speaker, please write to us either in my email ID, it is mentioned in the banner, so that we can send it to the concerned speaker and we'll organize to have the answer. We are extremely thankful to all of you, speakers, sponsors, and the delegates for their valuable time to be patient and attentive into this program. We hope that we will definitely get all of your support in your future endeavor. Thank you very much. With this, we are closing this session. Thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.